Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. I'm delighted you're here. I'm deeply grateful that you're here. And if you're listening to this podcast when it first drops, may I be among the first to welcome you into a brand spanking new year. We are right at the edge of another 365 days. And I have a few wishes for you that I want to share with you from the outset of the podcast today. Number one, I hope that 2022 is the year that you really decide to believe in yourself and your possibility. I hope it is the year you decide to shed things that are depleting you and things that are no longer nourishing you, maybe things that never did nourish you. I hope you lean into the things on your heart, even though you know full well it will be uncomfortable, uncertain, messy, and even at times a little scary. I hope that 2022 is the year that you go all in on mending the relationship that you have with yourself. Meaning, I hope you learn this year how to like who you are and how you move through the world. And if you need a little help igniting that pursuit, I'd like to invite you to join me for my free online 5-day event called The Healthiest Year Yet. This event is running from January 10th through January 14th. And I ran this same event last year, and it was a smashing success. We got a lot of incredible feedback. So, of course, I decided to host it again. And this is not a fitness or diet challenge. This is 5 days of making sure you are clear on the direction you want to travel this year when it comes to your health, and making sure that you are managing your brain in a way to make that possible. You know, popular media culture spends so much time talking about diet and exercise when it comes to health. And of course, those elements are important. But the truth is, no behavior around food or exercise or anything else will last for very long if you don't change the way you think about yourself, the way you think about your possibility, and the way that you think about the change process itself. So if you want to join me for these 5 days, for free coaching, free lessons, you can register by going to graceandgrit.com/healthiest year yet. Once again, that's graceandgrit.com/healthiest year yet. Now, this being the very first episode of a new year, I thought long and hard about what I wanted to roll into the year with in terms of a topic. And one word kept popping into my head in terms of relationship to health. And that word is integrate. To improve your health in a meaningful way, you're going to have to integrate all the parts of yourself that make you, well, you. And there's such a tendency to hyper-focus on one area, which for most people is physical well-being, physical health. But if you don't integrate all of your humanness into the process of improving your health, whatever results you achieve will be really tough to sustain. And we see this play out all the time in the diet and fitness industries. So what does it really mean to integrate? Well, Merriam-Webster Dictionary tells us that it means to coordinate or to blend into a functioning, unified whole. And one of the synonyms of integrate, which I love so much, is embody. And to embody something means that you give that something full expression. And in this case, that something is you. Health is about giving yourself full expression. To truly embody something means that you have a full body, felt experience of that thing. In this case, of health. What does it mean to embody health? Well, I can tell you this. Someone can appear healthy on the outside, but not be feeling healthy on the inside. That's not embodiment. To embody health, which is really the deepest level of health, is feeling it on every level. It's about thinking healthy. It's about feeling healthy. It's about acting in ways that support your well-being, mentally, physically, emotionally. And unfortunately, we live at a time and in a culture that feeds the pursuit of just looking healthy on the outside, right? Certain body fat percentage, certain clothing size, those six-pack abs, those bikini pictures on Instagram. That's not embodying health. That is appearing healthy from the outside. Now, if you've listened to this podcast for a while or you have come across any of my work elsewhere, you have likely heard me talk a lot about the word integrity, which of course is very closely related to the word integrate. Integrity is matching up your actions with the life that you say you want to live. And integrity requires that we address the wholeness of our humanity. But when we start isolating parts of our humanity, like just focusing on our body, we start getting into what we call integrity pain. Integrity pain is where, well, two things can happen. Number one, it's where our actions are misaligned with what we say we want for our life. But integrity pain is also the result of separating a part of your life out from the whole. And of course, integrity pain leads to dis-ease. Yes, disease. So to stay in integrity with ourselves, we have to integrate all the different dimensions of our life. The body does not work in isolation, right? The body has levels of organization that really build on top of each other. So cells make up tissues in the body, tissues make up organs, and organs make up organ systems. And the function of an organ system really depends on the integrated activity of its parts. So if you want to improve your muscular health, it's not enough to go to the gym and focus on building muscle. You have to pay attention to your digestive health and your endocrine health, even your lymphatic health and your immune health. All of these systems work together to support one another. So just like the body does not work in isolation, life does not happen in isolation. You are a multidimensional and dynamic human. So there are many layers to you. Yes, you have a physical body. You also have a mental capacity. There's an emotional part to you. You have relationships that feed into your well-being. You're constantly interacting and a part of the environment in which you live. And I choose to believe that we're also spiritual beings. All this to say there are many layers, and these layers are constantly shifting. So life does not happen in isolation, and improving our health does not happen by isolating one part of our life. Improving physical health requires that you manage not just your physical stressors, but all of the things in your life that act as stressors on your life. So your psychological stressors, your chemical stressors, environmental stressors, stressors that come from your habitual patterns, because all stress affects your hormones, and your hormones are the government of your body. If your hormones aren't communicating well, nothing communicates well. And my stressors are radically different from your stressors, which is why I'm not in the market of selling one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter programs, because it dismisses your unique individuality. It dismisses your unique humanness. So I have long believed and taught that improving health is really a practice of self-leadership. And improving health is really only possible to the extent that you are willing to go in and get to know yourself and how you operate. Improving health is also about expanding the capacity you have to make decisions for yourself, to lead yourself. But that is not what we're sold. In fact, that's not what a lot of people want to do, right? A lot of people don't want to go in and get to know themselves. And I get it. It's not fun to pull back the curtain and look at all the stuff you've been stowing away for years, just shoving in a closet somewhere so you don't have to pay attention to it. That is not a fun exercise. But awareness is rarely a feel-good exercise. Yet, it is so necessary to improve your life, any dimension of your life. So many people would like and prefer to follow a list of rules and regulations to elicit a particular outcome. But even if they reach that outcome, they can't sustain it because they didn't really learn the true skill sets of behavior change. Following a list of rules and regulations is not the true skill set of behavior change. In fact, this always reminds me of how I traveled through school. So I was a really good student in school. I always had a high GPA. I always did well in school. But I want to tell you, the only reason I did well in school is because I followed a list of rules and regulations that was given to me by the school system. I was awesome at memorizing information and then regurgitating that information on an exam. What I realized I wasn't so good at when I got out of school is how to integrate that information into my life. And so honestly, I kind of felt like my education started on the other side of school, which is crazy. So if you develop one skill set this year in dedication to your health and well-being, I hope it is the practice of self-leadership. And self-leadership really is understanding who you are, identifying what you desire, the direction you want to travel, and then intentionally guiding yourself towards that by managing your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, taking radical responsibility for all of it. Taking radical responsibility for what you do, why you do it, and even how you do it. Because think about it, When people sign up to go on some kind of extreme diet, right, inevitably they fail because their diets are kind of set up to fail. And when you fail, what do? You blame the diet. But really, you chose the diet, you chose that strategy. And so taking responsibility is recognizing that the strategy I chose was not the best strategy for me. What else might I try here? Rather than just repeating the cycle of dieting and continuing to blame it on the diet. So in order to lead yourself well, in order to develop self-leadership, you've got to get honest about who you are as a whole person and not just hyper-focus on one part of yourself. You're not only a body, you're not only a brain, you're not only a spirit, right? You're all of these things. So self-leadership is truly a practice of integration. And I have talked a lot about self-leadership on this podcast previously, but I just want to remind you at the outset of this year that there's really sort of 6 skill sets that fall under self-leadership that I think are so important to bolster your capacity to lead yourself well. So I want to just kind of review those here quickly for you. Obviously, we do a much deeper dive into all of this inside of my courses and community. But the first thing that is such an essential part of self-leadership is self-respect. Self-respect means trusting yourself and having confidence that the decisions you make are the right decisions for you based on the best of what you currently know about yourself. And if you lack self-respect, you will not show up with any degree of consistency for yourself. You will easily be swayed by the opinions of others. You will disregard your own knowing, which ultimately leads you further and further away from yourself and further out of integrity with yourself. And you live in the land of integrity pain. Self-respect, which is really just a practice, allows you to more easily set boundaries, to more easily say no to things that deplete you, and to more easily ask for what you need from others. So it allows you to advocate for yourself. And when you develop a healthy dose of self-respect, you're a lot less likely to waste your time comparing yourself to others, spending time on things that don't serve you, and seeking the approval of others. And I'm not saying you'll never do those things, but you will have a much lower tolerance for them. So self-respect is absolutely a linchpin to self-leadership. Then we move into self-awareness. And like I said earlier, it's really difficult and I would say impossible to change your life in a meaningful way without self-awareness. Self-awareness is the conscious knowledge of who you are and how you move through the world, your character, your feelings, your motives, your desires, your behaviors. And when you have a better understanding of these things, you can more easily direct yourself towards becoming the type of person you really aspire to be in the world. You are so much more capable of expressing the truth of who you are. When you become self-aware, you're empowered to make changes where there's gaps. And there's always gaps for all of us. If you are human, you have weaknesses. That is just a fact of life. You don't have to make those weaknesses mean that you're broken or that there's something wrong with you. In fact, you could look at weaknesses as what makes the human experience so stinking enjoyable. I know you're thinking, what? But hear me out. I know for the rest of my life, I'm going to have things to work on. I am severely flawed. So many parts of me I would like to improve. There are things about myself that I know if I spent time and attention on, it would, number one, bring me more integrity with myself. It would allow me to be more fully expressed, and it would generally make me a more powerful and capable human. And that work is never going away, right? When I improve one area, I'm going to identify other areas that need to be improved. It's kind of like going to the gym and you haven't been for a while. Maybe you haven't been for years, and you start working out and you realize, wow, there are some seriously weak muscles here. And you probably identify that there's some areas that aren't so weak. So I know for me, naturally, my legs tend to be a lot stronger than my upper body. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to go to the gym and just focus on legs. Now, it would be great for my ego because I feel very capable doing lower body work. I feel strong. I feel coordinated. It doesn't really challenge me in a lot of ways. And this is honestly how a lot of people go about their programming, is they tend to focus on the things that they're already good at because they're so afraid of revealing and facing their weaknesses. But once you are willing to stand in the arena with the gaps between who you currently are and who you ultimately want to be in the world, it gets so much easier to identify the practices you might need to adopt in order to bring yourself more in integrity. So this is the next layer of self-leadership, which is self-development. Choosing the practices that you want to embed into your life in order to become a more resilient and more fully expressed human. And once you identify those practices, you get to start managing the heck out of yourself. You don't need to be managed by somebody else. You get to manage yourself. You commit to a practice, and inevitably, practice is messy and sloppy, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes, which presents you with the opportunity to rumble with how you think about yourself and the emotions you're generating by how you're thinking about yourself. So self-management, another layer of self-leadership, is really taking radical responsibility for managing your emotions, managing your thoughts, managing your energy, managing your time, so you can show up in a more consistent way for the practices that will fortify you. And to do all of this work, to develop self-respect, to develop self-awareness, to literally develop self-development, to manage yourself in that development, you have to learn how to be self-compassionate. Because if you look at your weaknesses, your gaps, your mistakes, the messiness of your process through the lens of judgment, you will not stay the course for very long. You'll bounce from thing to thing for the rest of your life, and you'll never really feel fulfilled. A lot of bouncing, not a lot of results. So self-compassion is the willingness to get in the arena with skill sets that you know you're not so awesome at, which is exactly why you're stepping into the arena in the first place. And you make a firm commitment to yourself that you're not going to beat yourself up when you take a misstep. You, in fact, are going to learn from the misstep. Self-compassion is giving yourself permission to fiercely protect your resources, like rest and recovery, right? You've got to give yourself ample time to rest and recover if you want to keep showing up to practice. Because practicing things we're not so good at takes a lot of resources. Our brain has to really think things through. We've got to manage our emotions and our thoughts, all which requires work. So if you're rolling into those practices exhausted and spent and depleted, you're just going to throw in the towel. Self-compassion is forgiving yourself for past mistakes, for not understanding certain things about yourself earlier. It's about having gratitude for who you are, what you get to practice in this lifetime, and everything that you are doing awesomely well. And self-compassion is very closely linked to that self-respect. And you've heard me say this before, probably if you're a regular listener, that I'm a big believer that self-discipline is an extension of self-respect and even self-compassion. Because self-discipline is recognizing that there are weaknesses, that there are gaps, and that there is work to be done to move your life to higher ground, out of the respect that you have for yourself, and then fiercely committing to doing that work. That's what self-discipline is. So just to recap, health is a practice of self-leadership. Self-leadership is a practice of integration. And the specific skill sets that I think are so vital to integrating into self-leadership are self-respect, self-awareness, self-development, self-management, self-compassion, self-discipline. And these skills then are embedded into other areas to radically improve your health. And I break these areas into 4 categories, which I'll quickly go through here. Again, if you're a part of anything that I do, specifically Rumble and Rise, which is my membership community, these are the categories I teach on. Number 1, stabilizing chemistry, which again is a practice of integration. To lead yourself well, you have to be chemically stable. What does that mean? It means that you're giving yourself the basic nutrients that your body needs to function properly. So you are getting enough sleep, you're getting enough rest, and rest doesn't always look like sleep. That's for another podcast. You're nourishing yourself, you're eating foods that your body recognizes as food in amounts that support your physiology. You're hydrating. You're moving your body often and much, not just exercising, but moving frequently throughout the day. You're taking time to connect with yourself, to connect to nature, to connect to other people. These things are the bare bones of chemical balance. And truth be told, when people are consistent with practices around these things, health improves in a lot of amazing ways. So we kid ourselves that we need complicated, but I always try to pull people back and say, no, we need the basics practiced consistently. That's a great starting place. So if you're looking for a starting place this year, start with the basics that will help to balance your chemistry and apply the self-leadership skills to that practice. The other category I focus heavily on is choosing smart strategy. So choosing a smart strategy means you honor how behavior change truly works. Behavior change does not happen in a few days, a few weeks, or even a few months. Behavior change is a deep commitment to something to the extent that you're willing to practice over the long term. And honestly, for a lot of very powerful practices, that means practicing the rest of your life. So choosing a smart strategy means that you manage your resources like time and energy and focus and willpower and self-discipline. All of these resources are renewable, which is amazing and awesome, but they're only renewable if you are giving yourself the nutrients that you need to renew them. So that goes back up to that chemical stability. So if you're not resting, if you're not giving yourself ample recovery, you're not going to be able to restore your energy or your focus or your willpower. Time is not so renewable, right? Time is the one resource that we have a very limited amount of. It is not renewable, which makes it all the more important that we learn how to manage our time and spend our time with intention, with activities that are in line with what we say we want for our life. The third category I spend a lot of time talking about with my community is parenting your brain. So applying self-leadership skills to parenting your brain, how you think about yourself, how you think about your life, and what happens in your life generates emotion. And emotion is going to inspire action, or it's going to prevent you from taking action. So if you don't take responsibility for the sentences in your brain, which is all a thought is a sentence in your brain. It's not true. You don't have to believe it. It's just a sentence. And if you don't take responsibility for those sentences, you're going to create a lot of unnecessary stress. And remember what I said earlier, unnecessary stress across all walks of your life is really what breaks down human physiology. So taking responsibility for your mental landscape is a really powerful way to improve your health across all walks of life. It improves your relationships, it improves your mental health, it improves your physical health, all the things. And then, of course, we have to practice emotional agility, which is kind of the fourth bucket that I spend a lot of time working on with my students. And why? Because when we are not emotionally agile, meaning you're kind of cherry picking emotions, when difficult emotions show up, you may, like most humans, try to react, resist, or avoid emotions. And when we constantly do those things, we're actually depleting our health because emotions need to be processed. Emotions are messengers about how you're living your life. So we need to give all emotion, a seat at the table, which means we have to learn how to befriend all emotion, not just cherry pick the ones that we like. We have to learn how to process emotion in healthy ways, meaning every time you feel stressed out, you don't pour a glass of wine, or every time you feel lonely, you're not going into the kitchen to eat. Those are examples of resisting or avoiding emotion. If you actually build a practice this year of befriending all emotion, meaning you're willing to feel any emotion all the way through, you might be really surprised at what you stop doing in terms of behaviors that are costing you your well-being. You might not overwork so much, right? Being a workaholic is a way of avoiding a lot of emotion. You might not drink so much. You might not spend so much time on social media. You might find you're not spending so much time mentally beating yourself up. So the practice of developing emotional agility is a profound one. If you've never read the book, Emotional Agility by Susan David, I highly recommend it. But these four things can be health altering in such profound ways. So stabilizing chemistry, using smart strategy, parenting your brain, and developing emotional agility. All of which you won't do. You'll do none of these things if you don't have those skill sets of self-leadership. So this is the work that we do inside of Rumble and Rise. It's really a self-leadership focused program. And yes, we hyper-focus on the health arena because the health arena permeates every dimension of life. But these skill sets, of course, can be applied to any area of your life. So if you are ready to tackle health in a very different way than what has been presented to you by popular media culture, you can check out Rumble and Rise by going to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. And I will tell you, for the month of January, our masterclass topic is Embodied Confidence. What does it really mean to feel confident and embrace confidence now, before you have actually created the change that you want to make? And why is that so important? We're talking about all of that this month. So if you want to be a part of that, you can join for the month of January. And if you're not ready to invest in taking some kind of deeper program with me, remember, there's the Healthiest Year Yet event coming up January 10th through the 14th. And you can register for that for free by going to graceandgrit.com/healthiest year yet. Regardless what you decide to do in terms of joining me in these programs or not, I hope you reaped some value. I hope I gave you some reminder today that will help you in the year ahead. You are so worth the effort. And as I always say, with a little grace and grit, anything is possible. I'll see you again soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort. And with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.